Okay, welcome to week 9 or week 10. Actually, I forget which one it is. I think Muck was
I
like,
think it's 9, although it's hard to tell because Dan and Muck took on one, so I think we're counting that anyhow.
okay. Anyway, it's October now, and it's still blazingly hot in the summer here in the Saito team dev offices because we got weeks more of this stuff to come. Um, like Richard, we were actually chatting this week talking about Red Square. I think Ace had a comment about content, and we're trying to figure out, how to improve things. And one of the things we've noticed is that the team itself is less likely to post because we're now doing things in these weekly chunks. So
Yeah, we don't want to. We want to kind of keep some powder dry for these regular updates. So maybe we don't talk as much as we should in Red Square now. It's something to keep in mind.
yeah. Anyway, why don't we get into things? Normally, we start these with kind of an overview of light stuff that's happened, updates to previous work. Richard, do you want to go on with that?
I'll kick off by saying I need to double check it went into Red Square, but you should have seen on the various Saito channels a quick dev digest, just a quick one-pager on kind of what's been going on the week before. We're just trialing that. I've asked Lunatic Rack on the team to put that together, in the community to put that together weekly, just because I think it's sort of obvious to people who are on the team, people who are following along with GitHub, but maybe not to the general public, just how much is going on. So it's just good to be able to have a look there, especially if you've been waiting for something or you've made a request or whatever. You'll often see it go by in there. So that's a full full just wrap up of what's been going on in the week. And give us feedback on how useful it is. We can move it around, change it. But I think it's a pretty good set of information to have going out. Along with that, I think stuff I've been overseeing, we have been responding to some community stuff. So people have seen a few, I think, superficial but kind of important changes to the UI on Red Square. Some of it's been theming, alignment, responses to how the layers look, etc. And then also some work a little bit deeper on making sure that threading is more intuitive. A lot of it's copying Twitter. I mean, those guys have been doing it for a while, but just making sure that it's sort of neatly placed and easier to see which is which thread. I think that's maybe underrated in how important it is to people's experience, because it's how intuitive it is which conversation is which, and gives you a better sense of like what sort of interactions are happening. So I think aside from that, we've been looking at with again feedback on game casting. We're adding some features in just to be able to change the different modes to have a more responsive, snappy option, which is a little bit, its browser security gets in the way, but a little bit more sort of smooth in terms of its delivery, but less user-friendly in terms of setup and the look and feel. You've got your browser tab and the browser showing. But that's, again, just responding to some thoughts on how to make that suit all the different gaming modes, etc. And then I think, David, did you want to say something about RS content?
I was just saying I like the updates too. I kind of look at Red Square and I kind of think that the issues are around curation and moderation, because we've got this tension. On the one hand, we want Red Square to be a good front page for the project, so that anyone who's a newbie and kind of visits, they can come and they can see discussion that's project focused. And then at the same time, though, we want it to be something where people can post. And I think we've still got we don't have fine-grained enough tools to handle that. Thanks to the people who posted last weekend, we had a quick discussion and people suggested categorization as a solution. And I think that's what we're leaning to on team now. Red Square iterations, it's kind of slow because we're working on all of this other stuff. But with this and everything else, what really helps is when people think through, okay, what's the problem? What's stopping me from using it? And then, highlight those suggestions. I think a lot of the time people say, oh, it's the aesthetics or it's the design, and it's not. It's like there's something else that makes people nervous, or they don't like it, or the content doesn't visibly look the way they think, and that translates into an aesthetic criticism. But I think it masks off.
Yeah, I think it's it's a whole lot of things, because it's how does something grab you? Which means, can you find it? Is it in the right place on the screen? Is it where your eyes go? Is it obviously part of a conversation? Like, does it, have imagery? All those sort of things come together. And yeah, I think there's sort of idea of categories, and or also being able to sort of see the unvarnished theme, and maybe a bit more curated.
I think
Versus moderation, maybe a bit as well.
I think it's going to be we're going to, I think, use the categories to have more of a curated front page, and then you can turn it off and you can go into troll mode. It's weird because like we actually don't, trolls don't bother me. It's the issue is more if you've got some kind of behavioral issues, like if you get a newbie that comes and then they just hit 4chan mode, they might not want that, because a lot of people, they don't want to be hounded. And even Twitter has things like, oh, only approved accounts can reply, that sort of thing. So we may end up having more protections by default, and then people switch out of it. It's kind of how the games work.
I think as well with genuine topic-based categories as well, like there's lots of space for that. So if people want to start up a group that discusses a given game or whatever it is that you want, it's not a moderation question. It's a topic and on topicness curation question.
Let's move past this. I think people listening probably, or they're not here for where this stuff is happening. We are making, it's happening. If you have concrete suggestions, as before, continue to put them out. Put them out in Red Square. That's the easiest way to get it done. Likewise, if people do have design or aesthetic issues and spot one on any of the apps, do a mock-up, send it to us, or think clearly about exactly what it is and make the suggestion. It might get implemented faster than you think. Let's move on, though. So there was Red Square, game casting. I know there have been some updates. I'm actually not fully up to speed there.
I introduced them before. It's mostly around the options for whether you use the full tab, show everything, kind of slicker, smoother reproduction,
resolution,
or the
resolution option. Okay.
Yep. So I think moving on to announcements.
Why don't you go first? Because there's two.
There's two today. I'll grab the first one because I've been more involved with that, and then the second one is more involved, and we'll have a bit of a broader discussion. So the first is really good news. Saito is now trading on Bybit Dexpro. So that's Bybit, number 3 exchange, have a Web3 offering. So if you're using their Web3 wallet or you're a Bybit user, you can now trade Saito on the Dexpro system. That's just mostly great because it exposes the project to a whole bunch of Bybit users, gets our word out there a bit more, and it's a very frictionless way of doing that. At the same time, we will also be participating in their WSOT promotion, really to get a feel about how that works with our community, what that brings us. If that really goes off well, then we can do more of that sort of thing. But also, it's sort of possibly a branch to further collaboration with Bybit, more interaction with their ecosystem, etc. So, trying just to get the project out there and do it in a way that's got the most upside for us, basically. So let's basically watch this space. There'll be more information coming out about the promotion, and we'll obviously share the trading link after this call, and people can go and have a look at it live there. So that's announcement 1.
Okay. Announcement 2, we're going to be kind of technically involved because this is, for us, it's weird. Like, a lot of people, they're like, Bybit, number 3 exchange. Yeah, big news. For us, in a way, this is much bigger news because it's opens up changes and things that are possible with Saito that previously weren't. And so before we explain what's changed, we want to talk a bit maybe about how things currently work with how you get an app on the network and why this is a problem. So I'm going to start by explaining something that I think a lot of people don't know, which is how Saito works when you actually get it on the internet. What you do is you point your browser at a page that's on Saito.io, or it's on another server, and that server gives you an HTML file, like a web page. And inside that web page, there's a link to a piece of JavaScript that has the entire Saito light client engine. We download that light client engine, and your browser spins it up. And when it spins it up, it uses WebSockets to kind of make connections to other nodes in the
Yep.
network. So what you're doing when you visit Saito.io is you're downloading a web page that downloads the wallet that spins it up in your browser, and then the wallet in your browser controls the UI. So
Yeah.
this is really
So that's a node as well. People might not appreciate just what's going on there, but it's a very different architecture. It's not client server like, oh, I'm on Uniswap talking to Infura's servers, like a Web 2 client with keys. This is a full connected to the blockchain network
it's
node running in your browser. It's
it's
just
super
not doing everything a full node is doing in terms of data bandwidth.
it's super counterintuitive for a number of reasons. From the user perspective, it's like using a website. From the dev perspective, we've
Yep.
seen this again and again. When devs come in, they start building client server approaches because they're like, oh, I'm in the Red Square module. Therefore, the Red Square
Yep.
module is running on the server, feeding data to the browser. And it's like, no,
Yep.
the Red Square module is running on the client, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that's kind of counterintuitive about this that we're working on, and we've got the wiki, dev docs, and stuff. Here's the deeper reason why it's a problem. Or there are a couple of reasons why it's a problem. Some people will say, oh, it's a security issue. You're downloading the wallet. It's like, no. Often we'll get people who are like, when are you guys going to have a standalone Electron app or an app you can put on your phone? And the answer to that is anybody in the community who wants to dev can do that pretty much any time. That's probably a mid-level difficulty task. Anyone can take it on.
Yep.
The reason is,
especially with the WASM now. So we've got the core software is you just import the whole lot in one big binary chunk, which is what makes it quite easy.
You don't need that first step of going to the website to get the HTML and get the JavaScript. You can start with the HTML cache, and you can start with the JavaScript cache, and that's like having a Bitcoin wallet on your computer. If you just start that up in a browser or an application that looks like a browser, it will then make its connections to the network. It will then load the app. And so you don't have the dependency on Saito.io that I think some people think you have. They're kind of like, oh, is it like a Web 2 app? It's like, no, this is proper blockchain. However, it creates problems. So that problem's like the security problem's not really a big one. You can save and cache that stuff. It creates a problem for us, and I think for the community and dev, around how do we get applications into the network. And traditionally, the way that you've done this with Saito, and it's something that affects the way we dev on the network too, is when you make that JavaScript file contains the modules or the applications that you want people to have. And so to install a new application, once it's installed, you can disable it. That's like, okay, don't load this one. But it's got to be there in the code. And so what this has meant is that when we deploy applications to the network, we're recompiling that initial script that new browsers will then go and they'll get the updated code. And this, we think, is creating a bunch of problems. And the solution is we're going to solve this. One of the problems it creates is if you want to be deploying an app, you have to ask us to install it and recompile. Also, if you want to run an app and we don't want to do that, or you don't want to talk to us about it, it means you've got to run a server and you've got to be compiling JavaScript for your own users. Two, it means that if you do this and then the user comes to Saito.io in the same wallet or something, their set of applications can be different until we get to this kind of Electron downloadable wallet version. So there's a lot of things where just deploying an app isn't convenient. It's also affected us. People who are really, really, really old school may have heard us talk about the App Store. What this used to be is it used to be a way where you could say, well, I want to install these 5 apps. And we would have a server that would kind of custom recompile the JS for you, save the JS, keep it on our server, and you could use this to kind of prototype installing and removing applications. And there's a bunch of kind of secondary problems around that where it's not a good solution. Like there are things like Node.js modules, they can have libraries, and we don't want to download that library to compile it on our infrastructure because we don't trust that. But maybe you do. And then this app store, oh, well, we're now saving custom versions of the Saito.js file for custom users. And there's a layer of complexity around that. It's not a good solution. And we are totally, totally delighted with what has happened. It's happened last month. We call it dynamic module compilation. We didn't really think it was possible, and then we figured out how to do it. This is beautiful. This is a new way of compiling Saito modules and Saito applications, where what you get is you get a single file, and you can go you go up to the hamburger menu, you go to account, where it says installed module, there's this subtle little plus sign. If you click on that, it might not work on prod. It'll work by Thursday. We're going to get this out to you by Thursday. You click on that plus, you're going to get a drag and drop target. You just take that file, you move it into your drag and drop target, and it will install into your browser. And it will work. We don't need to run it on our server. We don't even need to know you've got it in your browser. And the best thing about it, you can install different node modules if you want, so you can do whatever you want. If you install a module, it's kind of like installing something on Windows, so you can do almost anything. You want polls in Red Square, you can add them. If you want a UI, beautiful thing, the module has...
I think that's the...
Go ahead.
That's the super cool thing is that because Saito, our stack, the Saito.io stack, what you see now, whatever we call it, is modular. You can do simple, tiny things that would just extend. You could change the base color to green if you want. That could be your whole module. Or you could build a standalone website that just appears at Saito.io/something for anyone who's dropped in that module.
Yeah.
So you get everything that's there and exists that you can extend, you could use. So you could just tweak video call, etc. Or you could and run that as a separate program, or you can extend or add a game or whatever you like. At the same time, it gives developers that same set of options they have. So you've still got the option of spinning up a full node and joining the network, etc. And that's been there for a while, but it's obviously a lot more overhead. You've also got this new mode where you can simply concentrate on, I'm a dev, I've got this idea, I want this product, this peer-to-peer app in people's hands.
Yeah.
Distribute it however you like. People just need to drag and drop it into place. It's a simple install, and then they've got your app. No one at the project is even ever is aware it's happening. So no one's going to be able to stop it. And that's also possible on anybody else's node, right? So it's fully properly decentralized. Anybody could offer this as a service.
Yeah.
And so you also get the ability for node operators to say, well, look, I'm not a dev, but I'm interested in running a node. I understand that to be a profitable node, I have to provide good service to users. So I'm going to let anyone distribute apps on this node. It really creates that openness.
There's a ton of ideas that Richard just covered there. I want to pull back and go through them one by one. First, a module can just be a tweak to an existing module.
Yep.
So you could deploy a third-party cryptocurrency module without asking us. You can do that. You could tweak the way Red Square posts work without asking us. So you can build a module that now has the ability to do whatever it wants with the Saito platform as long as you've installed it. Two, you can build things like Red Square and the arcade that have full control over the browser UI if you go to that module page. Saito.io/video call. This could be a user-developed application. One of the beautiful things about this is a lot of the good applications are getting bigger and bigger. So this is going to let us shrink the size of our default JS file also, which means it's going to be faster to load. It's going to be, people will have a lot more control over their defaults. So modules that do tiny things, modules that do really big things, you can install either of them without asking for permission. Richard then went on and he talked about like the App Store. And there's a ton of stuff that comes with this in our application section of the wiki, the dev section of the wiki. Yep. We've already updated the text to try to show people this is how easy it is to build these apps. This is how easy it is to install them. And so, you can put these apps up on chain too. And everything is cryptographically signed. So you're going to know that you get the application that was signed by the guy that wrote it. Or you'll know that this guy's claiming to have written and he's publishing that app, right? So there's App Store possibilities that happen, but they happen for us beautifully without the need for us to have this architecture for compiling things and tracking that Johnny compiled the script. And there's no middleware kind of
Well,
vulnerability.
it's that nice. It's one of those nice knock-on effects that comes from having PKI and doing it properly, right?
Yeah.
So you've got the whole heavy cryptographic toolkit you need if people want to be and should be verifying the provenance of the code they're running. So if you want to grab an app and run it, you can check against whoever distributed it to you that you trust them, right? That it's not just going to do something you don't want it to do. But there's no central authority. The project, nobody else, is authoritative about how that should run.
Yeah.
So you need to find out who you want to trust, but that chain of trust isn't dependent on a central authority. Nobody's going to make you use a particular system. And I really like that because it creates the ability to have different standards and settings for different people that suit each instance, each situation.
Yeah. So we're excited by it. There are a ton of reasons. Benefits, like Richard said, the App Store, much more flexible, much more PKI. Two, people, we no longer need devs to run infrastructure to launch apps. Because in the past, it's kind of like, okay, you got to set up your node. And then it's like, well, the network's under development and we're going to reorganize the chain and you got to, keep your node in sync. It's a huge hassle. No more.
Yeah.
Build the app.
Yeah.
It's going to be drag and drop, click to install. So, and devs don't want to run infrastructure. That's one of the things that we've been noticing when people ask, how do I do this? It's often, how do I get other people to run this?
If you hear, I mean, there's the application developer these days, the idea is they publish to app stores. That's the model, and that's what devs want to do.
Yeah. So it also, it's kind of interesting we're getting to it now because the token persistence curve is going along and we're soon enough going to get to the point of the network not resetting. But we think this is also super helpful for us in that because it liberates us from needing to kind of manage the app space. So that's the big announcement. We're going to go live with it on prod, I think, on Thursday. Where we are right now is we've got it working. There are a couple of machines where the compilation settings result in a bug. And so we're trying to figure out exactly what that problem is and document it so that we can say like, oh, you have this issue. You're on node 16.8.
It's something to do with the stack or the OS or something.
It has something to do with my setup. My setup runs into it. Other people's don't. I'm like, why? I guess anyway. So we're sorting this stuff out. The bad news, I guess, is if you're developing apps, you're still going to want to run a local version for dev because that's the fastest way to get feedback. But it's a huge change. And we've got some apps that we're going to be releasing that are fantastic that we're just going to release in this format. And we're kind of conceptualizing how does this change what Saito is in how we present it, right? Like the arcade can become more like the Xbox interface because we don't need to give you all of these apps by default. They can just be available for you. Maybe a single click. Anyway, I'm delighted by this, and I think it's amazing.
Well, we've been grappling, like you said earlier, with the App Store concept for a long time because we've had iterations of it that were quite clunky and that didn't solve all of these problems. They solved a set of them. And so this is a really huge step because it's something we've wanted and we've always envisaged. No one here is wanting to throw up a walled garden app suite that's excluding anybody. We want exactly the opposite. So
I like it also because I think it pushes us closer to script kiddies. And we have this debate, and we see it actually in the community, right? There are a lot of people, because they're conditioned by Solana, they're conditioned by these 500 million to 2 billion to 4 billion networks. How do they do things? And they're looking for like AAA game devs, studio games and stuff. But the scale and the complexity of the way they operate, you need to be building in React. You need to have those C++ libraries and stuff. A script kiddie is not going to do it. This, I think a script kiddie can really do. It's like, I want to tweak red square. Do it. I want this new.
And for those script kiddies who don't know how to do anything but use React, which I think is also quite common these days, I'm going to try a compilable React module this week sometime and see how that goes.
By the way, this is what Richard leaked last week. I don't remember exactly what you said. I'm pleased we're going to talk about this next week, and Richard's like, "Oh, and
Yeah,
compiling stuff." I'm like,
yeah.
but
Well,
yeah, I think it'll make a
no, it's
difference for Script Kiddie because you can see our tutorials. We got 5. Here's another thing, guys. We need to know what tutorials to write.
yeah.
We've revised the wiki structure. You can take a look. We've got 5. I don't know. Maybe they're the right
Yeah, no,
5.
that's a really good point. Have a crack at going through them. Anybody who's even vaguely interested, and then let us know where there's a gap or where you got to and what you would have liked to have done next. Because these are in some ways, the dev docs for a certain subset of developers, and we want to get them really good, and we want to make sure that it's encouraging to people that you get results fast and they can see what's going on.
The big Ethereum change, which I think was 2016, is on their front page. They put up the source code for here's how you make a token, and they went from 1 year from that to ICO mania, right? So I actually think that Ethereum's success is partly a result of targeting script kiddies, and that a lot of crypto is moving in the wrong direction on this because scale, whatever. But yeah, the tutorials, there's kind of a mix because we've got like concepts we want to introduce. Like, here's how you build a module. Here's the structure of a module. Because there's a bunch of amazing stuff that modules can do. Like, you can put an SQL directory, and when you start up that module, any machine that has a database will provide database support. We've got kind of the ability to host custom stuff on web pages, saving and loading transactions. There are events that happen. So if you get a new friend, you listen for an event, and then your module can do something, like send them spam. So we've got like concepts like the event listening. Here's how you show the web page. Here's how UI components. And at the same time, there's this other thing where a lot of the tutorials, I think, people just want to do something cool. And so we're kind of looking for the mix of that. But yeah, if you've got good ideas, fire them in. Because we're looking for the best ideas, and we want to structure it so that someone who hits that tutorial page, they see something and they're like, yeah, actually, I kind of want to do that. It might be as simple like an advertising module. Here's how you get your ads showing on other people's browsers, There might also be something with organic marketing around the ability to do this, where the ability for people to, like steps to profit 1, 2, 3, and 2 is install my module in Saito. That will help bring people into Saito and realize how powerful a scalable PKI network is. So
yeah, I think that's really key, and so people can get us feedback on those tutorials and try building something. Let us know. That would be really valuable because I think this is for a big chunk of developers, this is a great way to get started and or deploy a fully fledged application you want people running.
Yeah, or sell the application if you want.
True. You sell it for Saito or ETH on chain.
Yeah,
that's quite true.
Yeah. Anyway,
cool.
Hopefully, the other good thing is if you want to play around with something like the aesthetics of Red Square with a feature, and you build an app, you can build an app to demo it, and then you can share it with the community. True. And then be like, guys, look, everyone loves this, and we're like, yes, let's get this into default. So we're hoping it also opens up the ability for people to participate in a way that, like you don't need to ask for permission, I think in the past, like compile the scripts and run the server, it's been a barrier. And so it's so good to get past this.
Well, it also just the branding on it, right? Because it's Saito.io and it's got our logo on it, a project logo on it. People feel like, I need to ask permission. So, we're the least gatekeepy, or at least intentionally gatekeepy people around. The whole point is to get rid of it. Yeah. And so making it easier is a good step toward that, I think, as well.
Okay.
I think we're sort of a good 30 minutes in. We're trying to keep these things sharp. I think we had one sort of question we wanted to go.
It came through the dev channels. I think if you've got questions, raise them in the dev channels or raise them in Red Square, and we'll try to deal with them if we see them. It was about the roadmap, Richard, open era, when we're switching to the next era.
Yeah, so I think people seem like, for instance, I've been keeping the migration page up to date with its status on the token persistence curve, and I forget exactly what it was, but yeah, someone brought up a question of, and I think we've been seeing more questions in dev channels generally about where are we in the roadmap, but when are we kind of in the next era?
I think technically it's 4 months. I think it's supposed to be the end of December.
Yeah.
We're on schedule. Like, as you guys can see, we're dog fooding a lot of the. I think a lot of people don't understand that. It's like we're looking at the problems that we run into because we think anyone's going to run into them. So things like Dynamically, the reason we pushed this forward and pushed it up is because we're like, yes, it solves a problem we have. It solves a problem other people have.
Well, it's a massive accelerator to ecosystem adoption, if you want to use kind of buzzwords. That that just enables everything to move a lot faster. So it's really cool. So I think to that end, we
pushed it up by a month or two. We're taking a look at the token persistence curve, and we're seeing if we can shorten it because we're making so much progress on the app front, actually. So
I think on that we'll probably do a big review internally because it's a good time. Saito Summer's been huge. Big, good for us to maybe do a bit of a review and then make a more extended update on that because it is a good question and it's something that we can do. And it's also with your nose this close to the grindstone, it could be easy to miss actually what's going on. And so a big picture update for people is probably overdue. We'd like to get one out.
Why don't we call it here because we got a ton of work to do. What's going to happen? We're going to get this out on Thursday. We'll share with you guys, including instructions on how to test it with one of the tutorial modules or a new module or something. Ideally, we can get feedback. We can improve the process both on the dev side as well as the user side. And so that's this week. Week 9, week 10. We'll see you next week.
Week 9, I think.
Next week is going to be something.
Thanks, guys.
Totally new.
See you then.